Hey guys, welcome to the podcast. In today's episode, I talk with my very good friend, Francesca Jones. Fran is an architecture student at the University of Cambridge in the UK. Francesca is actually someone I really admire. Throughout school in DC, she could always balance between the sciencey subjects like maths and science and physics, but also the creative subjects like art, which is what she pursued at A-levels. And it almost seems like architecture is the perfect mix between the two. So in this episode, I'm just really interested in why she chose to pursue it in university. We talk about whether she has a particular style, what good architecture is, so her relationship with art from childhood, and also what she looks to do in the future as an architect. As always, I had a blast talking with Fran. Please don't forget to subscribe and share. Without further ado, here's Francesca Jones. It's really nice to see you again.
Yeah, no, same, definitely. I've thought about you a lot, but haven't actually got through to
That's so nice. Wait, go on.
No, that's it with the compliments.
Wow.
They end there.
Wow. All right.
No, I think about you because often you post quite regularly on like Instagram and stuff like that. So I suppose I see it and because I'm getting a snapshot into what you're up to, maybe.
I think, yeah, it's kind of funny. I think I post more. There's more content of me than probably anyone you know, like in your own circle. Because I've done like you'll be my like 24th episode. So if you like an average episode is 1.5 hours. So there is almost 45 hours of me talking on the website.
That's like incredible though that you've already got 24 people. You must do more than one a week then.
I do.
Like,
I try to do 2 or 3 a week. And then
yeah, because I was thinking you haven't been doing that for 24 weeks.
Yeah.
That's good though. It's good that you found time for it.
Well, you only really find time for things if you really want to do it. So I was like, this is pretty fun, you know. And otherwise I would probably never ever talk to these people.
No, and also it's nice to sort of catch up with people. Like I know some of the people are people from like your uni, I'm guessing, as well, and things like that. But from people from like DC, they're people who haven't sort of spoken to for 2 years or so, I guess, probably. So nice to catch up with them. No, I enjoyed, like, I haven't watched all of them, but the ones I have watched, it's been like nice to see like a snippet of what people are up to as well. So it's been good.
I'd be worried if you watched every single one of them.
You'd be worried I had too much time on my hands.
I'd be worried, like, what are you doing with your time? Anyway, yeah. What have you been up to? This podcast isn't about me. It's about you.
Oh dear. Person who doesn't like talking about themselves. What have I been up to? I mean, I feel like I've kept myself incredibly busy doing not a lot during lockdown. I mean, it's not lockdown at the moment, but during this whole sort of period of time, I guess. I've done a lot of just walking. Like, we live relatively close to the coast, like just sort of a 10-15 minute drive away. So often just go like park there and then walk along the seafront because it's nice. Like, I don't really mind those sorts of walks, whatever the weather, whether it's like boiling hot, it's nice to have like the fresh air, the sea breeze. But even if it's like a really windy, grotty day like today, it's also nice because there's that sort of like lovely feeling of the wind is like battering your face. Like, it's the perfect like way to just sort of get out of your head, I find, is that sort of like walk along the seafront. It's nice to sort of know that like there's this unobstructed view, I think. Like, there's nothing around because the sea, I mean, we can see France from where I live like on a good day, but that's miles and miles away across the other side.
You live in I thought you lived in Kent, right? Is that
Yeah, I live in Kent.
That's in the south.
It's in the southeast. So if you can picture a map of England, it's sort of like this little foot that's like under London, sort of like sticks out, a heel, I guess, that sticks out down there. And I'm sort of like closest to the south coast of that. So
do you walk by yourself or is it usually with family?
Typically with family, like usually with my mum because my dad's been working a lot like over lockdown, like over the time, because he's still been like stuck in England for the whole of it. So he's just been doing like loads of like team meetings and stuff. So typically with my mum, which has been really nice. Like, it's definitely been so nice having her. I don't think I'd have really managed to have stayed in England on my own, particularly for all this time, without being with other people. I sort of am the sort of person that I like being by myself, but also I find that I overthink things way too much if I'm on my own. I like having somebody else to sort of share my thoughts with. So, I don't know. You don't usually talk.
Yeah, it's great that, you have that sort of relationship with parents, because like I know a lot of people that don't necessarily converse that much with their parents.
Yeah, I don't know whether it's an only child thing. I'm not sure because I guess I've grown up with just them a lot. Like lots of people who have siblings, I suppose, are probably more likely to have shared more of their thoughts with their people closer to their age. But I guess I've always just been quite close to my parents because of that. But I don't know. They're quite understanding about everything anyway, so they're easy to talk to.
From what I got, I only met your mom very briefly. I haven't met your dad, but they seemed very nice. We talked about tennis, and I was watching tennis before this call. I was like, I'm gonna wait for Fran. What am I gonna do? I was watching highlights of like Nadal against Federer. I was like, my adrenaline is going up. Is this a good thing to do before I call someone?
No, you need to like fill your time with something. No, that's good. What is it like? Past like rematch or like because there isn't a current
final of the 2017 Australian Open, I think.
Okay, probably some good points there.
Yeah. Wait, I wanted to ask you. So, what's the situation like? So, your dad has been in the UK for quite some time, I'm guessing.
Like months. So, middle of March, he came back like the 12th of March or the 13th of March or something like that. And he's just been back here.
Does his job like enable him a lot to work from overseas mostly? Because there are some people that just don't have that luxury.
Yeah, it does a lot. Most of his stuff is really meetings. See, I didn't realize this until he's been at home, and so I've heard pretty much all of his phone calls since he's been back. Because he's a civil engineer, so I assumed, I don't know, I had this idea of people with his like papers like draft like in front of them where they were poring over drawings and diagrams and things like that. No. Yeah. Generally, it is just talking about money. It's like, where are we going to get this from? Whose time is this going to be like billed to? The whole thing is just like managerial now. So I realized that. So his job is generally just something that can be done like just through calls through most of the day. I mean, I think he thinks it's still easier to be like in the country and sort of actually in the office. But since the office hasn't opened up in Doha yet for them, so there was no point in him really going back and sitting on his own in a house in Qatar. So he's just been here, which has been nice because although he has been working like throughout the day, it does mean we get like weekends together and things like that. So that's been fun.
Generally, at this point of the year, I'm not including you, but would your parents be back in Qatar right now? Both of them?
No, my mum wouldn't. My mum would still be with me. My dad always takes a few weeks during the holidays, so he might have been back, but he might have been in Qatar. He usually takes, I don't know, about 4 weeks or something off. So.
And your mum generally she lives in Qatar with your dad, but just goes back in the summer, doesn't she? Right.
Yeah. She usually lives in with my dad, but since I've moved back to England, and because as you know, my term times are so ridiculously short. It actually means she's been spending like so much time back in England here with me, which has been nice. I've enjoyed that. So it's been good because if I'd stayed like in college accommodation, it would be fine but most of my friends typically like go home during the holidays. And I don't know, there's something very eerie about being in a room on your own in an empty corridor. So I always want to go home, I think.
I experienced that for like a few weeks and I was like, there's nothing to do here. Like after all your friends leave, you're just like, what is the point of me being here at the moment?
I know, so there's just a room and emptiness.
Is your dad looking? From what I've heard, Qatar is like starting to kind of relax a lot of its laws. So is your dad looking to go back soon?
Yeah, he's looking to go back at some time. I mean, it's very difficult because they're sort of, I don't know, because your dad's still working in Qatar, isn't he? Yeah. So I don't know how he's doing it, but they're doing like phased reopening of the company. They're doing like 20% in, 40% in, etc. And he doesn't think he's going to be like one of the first lot of people to go in. So he might be in like the second or third sort of phase. So he's looking maybe October perhaps to get a flight. He's also hoping that by then they might have relaxed some of the rules because he doesn't like the thought of like having to wear like a mask and a visor on a plane for 7 hours. Yeah. So I don't know. Even he would do it if he had to, but he's not. He'd rather he didn't have to. But I don't know. I feel like it could go on for ages, that ruling. I feel like that's something they're not going to relax for like months. So
I think the problem of having to wear a mask and a visor is probably like it's not the biggest thing to worry about currently.
It depends like how claustrophobic you get with that sort of thing. Like I've been fine just wearing a mask in shops, and like all the ones I've been wearing have been fine. But I know my mum wore one once, and she said that it. And I understand because I tried the same one on another time, and it like made you so hot, like because it felt like all your like as you were breathing, it just felt like it was like steaming up like your whole face, which firstly doesn't even feel like it's made during the point of what a mask is supposed to do, and secondly just makes you feel kind of like hot and overwhelmed by it. But no, exactly. If you had to do it, then you have to do it for like 7 hours. You just get on with it, don't you?
By the way, like off topic, did you do something with your hair? It's looking thicker.
No, you see, actually, it should be looking thinner because it was really long. Thinner, yes. Well, because I last got my hair cut like literally in December when I went back to Doha last time, which was like 8 months ago, whatever. And so during the heat wave back in England, my hair was just ridiculous. It was so hot, and I was just like, I can't stand this any longer. I'm just going to get a haircut appointment and just go for it. And so I got like a bit cut off. I don't know, that much. And then the lady was just like, your hair's too thick. And so she got these like massive thinning scissors and just went and just yanked my hair off at the back, like literally like mounds of hair was just like pouring off onto the floor. I was just there like, okay, not exactly what I asked you to do, but that's fine. Hair grows back.
There's no going back now. I'm the opposite. I'm trying to grow my hair long. It's going. I'm gonna get a mullet at one point, but I'll have to go through it. But even for girls, I guess like short hair is, your version of short is like really long for like guys standards.
Yeah, no, my version of short is still quite long. But you had quite long hair, didn't you? When I last saw you in person, I feel like your hair was quite long.
Yeah, I had it tied up a lot of the time, and like looking back on pictures of it, I was like, not my smartest move.
You were just going through that phase that guys went through, I don't know, however many years ago, when like the man bun was the real thing.
Do you remember like when in year 8 or like year 9 I had like a proper mullet? No? Okay,
oh, I don't know.
I'm gonna end this call
right now. I feel like I do remember it sort of. I remember you having quite thick hair anyway, sort of what I can picture, sort of on your head. Well, I mean, obviously on your head, but you know what I mean. Like the top of your head, like a sort of like bowl-shaped sort of thickness, if that makes any sense.
I'm going to take that as a compliment, I think.
Do take it as a compliment. You had good hair.
Yeah, but I'm looking to go back to Doha as well. Obviously I haven't seen my parents since January, since they visited me in the UK. But since then it's been like 8 months almost. 7-8 months. And since like my university has the option to do a lot of the classes online, I thought I'd take the opportunity to go back and stay there for a month or so.
Okay, that's really good. That's nice that you can do that. No, when would that be? Sort of start of term idea, or
after I finish my internship. Literally the only thing stopping me from going back right now is my internship. So it ends the 4th of September, so I'm looking to go back on the 7th. And then I'll stay there until probably mid-October or so. I was hoping that you'd be there so we could meet up, but it doesn't look likely. What's your
No.
Have you begun? So I'm guessing you've begun your term. Yes? Not yet.
No. I don't start my term until I think the official date is the 6th of October.
Okay.
It is so long, this holiday. But no, I've got a while, but I won't be going back to Doha. So there's no point really for me at the moment to go back there. So
what was the original? Is this a delayed start? What was the original plan?
Oh. No original. We always start in October. It's I don't know why. I mean, I think typically British unis do start latest. Like I know a lot of people going back like 27th of September, things like that. So they do start quite late anyway, but we just push it to the extreme as how late we can start. But I don't know. But no, it would have been nice to have like met up in person again, but it will happen at some point. Sometime in the future.
So your term ended in April or May?
May, I think. It's so confusing because I don't really remember when term ended, because I can only remember when I left uni, because we had that I left the 13th of March or something like that, but then I had a whole other term after that, but I don't even know when that ended. I think it was sometime in May, but I can't remember when exactly. Beginning of May, maybe.
What have you been up to then in the term break? It sounds like you've just
in the term break,
long
walks everywhere. No, I've done so much. Done a lot of tidying up around the house, because that's one of the things we found about living abroad for how many years, is that we had a house here, but we never really, I'm not gonna say we didn't look after it. We looked after it, but there were sort of major things that we sort of let slide because we were only back for holidays. So we've just been sort of painting a lot of walls, sort of replastering all the windows, so scraping all the paintwork off on doors and things like that. Lots of things that just needed to be neatened up about the house. Putting up the summer house and things like that, and just tidying up the garden, which had become a bit overgrown. So even though there were negatives about this, you had if looking at the positives, it really has enabled us to really look after the house a bit more and be at home and do lots of the things we've been sort of talking about for a while. So that's been quite fun. I mean, I can't even count the number of paint samples we have bought, when you're trying to decide which shade you want on the walls. We've got a lot of those. So
in terms of comparing to what a normal summer would look like, is it more or less similar, or how's it been?
No, it's quite different. I think we spent quite a lot of time at home. Normally, I don't know. I normally am sort of person that quite likes being out a lot of the time. I'm not fond. I like being in sort of at the beginning of the day and the end of the day. After you've been out and you felt quite exhausted, it's nice to just come and relax. So usually I'd get up and go out to do day trips, different places, go up to London a lot more often, I think, and things like that, and would have probably have put in a few courses, whether that was sort of art courses or drawing or architecture related courses, something like that, which I normally filled my time. And actually this summer was the summer I was hoping, I mean, you were very lucky that you managed to get an internship, but I was sort of hoping that would be something I'd be able to do this summer, but just didn't work out because of the situation in England. So I'd hope that would have filled up a lot of the summertime. But the difference is I've just spent so much time in this house. I've never spent this long in this house ever.
But I'm guessing from what I know is you seem to be someone that is able to kind of busy yourself. I think we're similar in that sort of way, but
yeah,
to me it doesn't ever sound like you have nothing to do. You're always either working on your academics or something related to your academics.
Yeah. No, you're probably right. I never have nothing to do. I always have a long list of things that I really want to do. There are lots of things academically relating that I want to sort of learn how to do. There are always so many things that you can sort of do to improve yourself so that you're in a better sort of stand for next year or going into the job market as well. But sometimes I do have to motivate myself to do them. I can't say I'm always the most productive of people, but I try and push myself to it. I don't know. I haven't done as much art as I wanted to do this holiday, so I'm starting now. I'm starting in the last 6 weeks, and I'm going to do more artwork.
If you do, what sort of art have you been doing? I mean,
I
know that's sort of broad question.
No, it's not. I mean, I typically am sort of drawing, painting, stuff like that. I have sort of canvases that I've started, sort of big A1 canvases that I've been starting to sort of fill up and paint. Just so for spaces within the house.
You're gonna finish exactly one painting for the next 6 weeks.
Yeah, one painting. That's my aim. No, and I think I'm going to start doing more little doodles and drawings as well. I mean, one of the things I told myself I was going to do more of, and I have done it a bit, was carrying a sketchbook with me everywhere I'm going, and whenever I sit down for a break, it's just sitting and sketching whatever it is, whether that's people sort of milling around or houses in the distance or the sea or the countryside, which I've done a bit of, but not as much as I planned to do. But I don't know. It's nice to have a sort of record. When I was younger, I used to keep summer holiday diaries. In fact, behind me, I have stacked a shelf just full of my summer holiday diaries from when I was little, which are they're childish, but they're so lovely to look through now because it's just a real reminder of what I did when I was younger. Those little trips that you probably wouldn't have a recollection of if you didn't have actual photographic evidence of you being there. So it would have been nice to have more of that now at this age as well. because I'm worried that it will just like skip a few years where I just haven't got like that record. But
I really relate to that because I don't really draw, but as someone that takes a lot of photos and takes a lot of videos, like I can, instead of looking back at like old summer diaries, I look back at like old summer videos and like, oh, we went to that place, we went to that place. It's always just really nice. It's been a really nice memoir of times.
No, I can imagine that. It's
I-
lovely. Is that something that you did? Like, I know you've done a lot more recently, because I know when, like, at DC, you were always like in the communications committee and things like that. And but is that something you've always done, like sort of film or something more, like, I don't know, since like year 12-ish onwards?
No, I think I started when I was like 12. I had like this,
Really?
like a iPod Touch, like the small one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just remember just the joy of making like really dumb trailer videos with like Nerf guns and everything, and that sort of, I don't know. I think like just throughout I've been looking for that sort of wonder again whenever I do things. Obviously, I'm not a child anymore. But sometimes you can tap into that sort of childlike amazement that you can find with things.
Definitely.
I want to like reverse that question on you a bit because like this isn't a question that I've ever asked you, but like when did you? I want to know more about like what your childhood was like. Was it in terms of as someone that is currently studying architecture, was there always like a sort of backdrop of you, like you can sort of see how you came to do architecture? Like, were you always drawing as a child, or like were you always creative? What did that look like for you?
I don't know. I've always been semi-creative, but not the sort of child that, because some children you can really tell like from a young age they're going to be great at drawing. Like my drawings were never very good when I was younger. They were pretty sketchy, rough. And I wasn't even that good at like just colouring in books. Like my mum is always going back and saying, "You never did colouring books properly. I bought you so many colouring in books and you just like scribbled over the pages." But I don't know. I think probably from around 11, maybe 12ish, probably a bit like you, 12ish, 13ish, or maybe even before that. I did start like drawing lots of pictures, and it would probably always be of buildings were really my main interest. Like if I went somewhere, like we do a lot of like family trips out, like with like I say large family. My aunt, my uncle, and my grandma. We don't have a very large family. We did lots of trips to sort of like National Trust like heritage buildings and things like that, and so I'd always take like photographs and like then come home and sort of try and draw them and sketch them. So I suppose that's always been there at the back of my mind. I often ask like, when did you like decide that you want to study architecture? And I honestly cannot remember. It just was in my brain one day and it just went forwards from there. I'm not sure why I started with that idea, but I guess probably at the back of my mind, I knew that it was something that I'd always been interested in because that was always what I'd focused on my thoughts and drawings towards. That's
kind of curious because I as a child we expect them to draw like things that are living. So for you to have like a intrinsic interest in buildings is I don't want to say it's unconventional, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose so. I guess it probably has been. I never really thought of it just because it was what came to me. Like I never thought of it as being weird exactly, but I don't know.
I didn't say it was weird.
I guess
unconventional.
You didn't call me weird. No, it's fine. No, I guess I don't know. I think probably actually whenever I was looking at artwork though in general, like from like like peers and things like that, I probably was always really like drawn to Waleer's artwork. Like I always like really admired Waleer as an artist. Like when we were in primary school, I just used to love her work that she did, and so I guess I took that like inspiration from her, but then just didn't. She was good at people, very very good at drawing people. I'm impossible at drawing people. Find it impossible, but took it for buildings instead. They don't move so much.
You did pretty well. I remember like I think it was your A-level artwork. You drew a lot of people. Well, I don't want to say there were people, but a lot of figures in dancing motions.
Yeah, I did. That's true. The more figurative, sort of sketchy things that aren't really people, I think, are okay. They're just more of like a connotation and idea of movement, I suppose, which is what I was trying to convey in some of those. I think actually the topic that we were given was movement, so I think that was okay. But when I look back at my sort of artwork, like A-level art, my least favourite pieces are the pieces that have people in them.
Why is that?
Even now, if I look at them, I'm like, they don't look realistic enough. Like, I feel like either you have to have a style that's very realistic or your very own unique style. And I was trying to be realistic, but it didn't work because I just don't have that sort of natural ability to capture that, I think. So they were a bit sort of cartoony, but not quite cartoony enough, I think. I don't know. They just didn't feel like me anyway. They felt more like copies of other people's work, I suppose. But I don't know.
I guess your career as an artist, well, this sounds a bit much to say, but you know what I mean, right? Over the years.
Yeah. My nice, like, amateur hobby and doing some doodling.
I mean, yeah, okay, whatever. But you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Have you been able to kind of like hone in on the type of style that you prefer doing, like something that, resonates with you?
I think I'm still searching for my style in a sense, which I feel is probably quite a cliched phrase, but I feel like I spend a lot of time, this is probably where I waste a lot of time, is like on Pinterest, just like scrolling through and falling in love with different artworks. But I've realized recently I probably need to do less of that because I feel like that's influencing my own style too much by looking at other people's. Because although I love their work, it's them, it's not me. So I think I've started real recently to try and develop my own sort of technique. I mean, usually it's sort of more mixed media in the sense that I never sort of sit down with just like a paintbrush and just want to paint something. Usually I'll start off like painting like a background in watercolors, then I'll scribble over that in pencils and then go over that in like pen over the top of it just to create like more texture. In the sense that's probably where I feel most comfortable, but I still haven't developed a style yet, I guess. I'm waiting for that to happen.
I guess it's a really difficult question to ask because, I'm someone that believes that, there is really nothing truly original, and everything, what people perceive as originality is probably something old that has been given like a new conventional twist to it. Not conventional, like what's the word?
Like, yeah.
And
your own take on it, your own sort of personality is being imposed on it, I guess.
Yeah, and that's what creativity is to me. So I think it's beautiful that you still you wander through Pinterest. I relate on the level that as a writer, people do say the same things, like you got to find your own voice, your own style of writing.
Yeah.
Like, the only way you can do that is by doing, it's by actually trying things out.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's actually quite funny what you said about the phrase you said, nothing is original, because this was a very contentious point during term time, like last year, with some of my friends, because one of my friends is one of the girls I study with is very creative, and she always creates something that's sort of out of the box, sort of very interesting. She always wants her work to look different, stand out, and it does. It's amazing, her work. But sometimes that draws her into conflict with like the tutors and their opinions. And we had this interesting moment when one of the tutors was just like, he said something along the lines of, you need to stop just trying to like push the boat and things like that. And she said, no, but I want my ideas to like be more original, more me. And he's like, there's nothing original. She's like, that's your opinion or something like that. Like there was this like, that heated moment between tutor and like a student when you're just standing there in the class like, okay, I'll hide from this debate. But I see what she means. Like there's definitely a lot of times when we just sort of copy each other, but then it is very hard to create something completely original. Like everything is always influenced by something you've seen, isn't it? Like you very rarely have you just imagined something in your dream and it sort of come to fruition, I suppose, from that. I don't know. Even your dreams are sculpted by what you see around you, aren't they? So
it's really difficult to see how that kind of stance holds water, because like you are the product of everything you see, everything you read, everything you draw, everything you study. It's
yeah.
And I don't think there's anything wrong if you just redefine original as a different blending of parts of different ideas, because that to me that's what creativity really is.
Yeah, no. Definitely. I agree. I do agree with you. Like you mentioned like you're writing, like are you still writing or not?
Off and on. I tried to write a blog post. It it ended up being 2,200 words, and I'm only like 20% through it. And I'm like, okay,
Oh wow.
this is not
What was this
going
blog
well.
about?
It was actually something quite, it was about Islam and like the Quran
Okay.
actually, and actually how to kind of
Okay, so
understand it and the importance of thinking about it rather than just, uh, just reading it by rote.
yeah, like rote learning, yeah. Okay. So I guess it was something that was like very important to you, which is why you felt like you could
Yeah.
just keep on writing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's partially my fault because it was like in hindsight, it's such a huge topic that it's probably, there's been volumes and books written about this, and I think I can capture and distill things down to a um, single blog post. Yeah, no, that's not gonna happen. I have
No, but at the same time, it's probably quite important because for some lots of people aren't going to read those texts, those huge volumes, are they? But actually, just a single blog, like loads of us are scrolling through social media or our phones or something, and it's more like to capture more people's attention, I'd imagine, than like those sort of volumes of books. So it probably is an important thing to write. But I wish you luck with it.
I want to ask you something. It's kind of a funny question, but would you describe yourself as creative, depending on what you define as creative?
I don't know. I would like to say I'm creative, but at the same time, I always have this niggling self-doubt in the back of my mind that's just there going, are you creative? Is anything that you're doing particularly original? Well, not original, just... I think that I lean towards the more creative side of my brain, I suppose, than the sort of factual side. But I guess there's still a part of me that clings on to something that's already like, I guess in school very much lots of what we did was sort of like reading books and like it was text, it was like maths, it was science, it was something that was there that we just had to learn for an exam or something like that, which sort of crushes creativity in a sense into those books that you're just learning for an exam. And I guess there's still a part of me that like harks back to that because it's like a security, like that's something like that in creativity. I think for me, I feel more vulnerable as be in my own sense of creativity because it feels like you're having to create something that's more personal to you rather than just like regurgitating something else. If that makes sense.
What do you mean by vulnerable?
Vulnerable in the sense that I feel like what I'm putting out there is a reflection of my thoughts. So and I always have that fear that somebody's going to criticize it, somebody doesn't like it, somebody doesn't think it's worthwhile or something like that. Whereas if you're sort of taking something that you've read or you've learnt, you have more assurance that that's correct. I mean, even that isn't always correct, but like it's sort of written in the book. People believe it more. I don't know. I feel more. Yeah, it doesn't come from me. Whereas I think creativity, I always believe is something that's more of an internal like thing that you're sort of putting out there. But also I know that's incredibly important to probably like my job, like the career path that I want to go into. Like creativity and sort of like that originality is something that it needs to be there. And I know that I probably need to become more like self-assured, if that makes any sense. Probably doesn't. Anyway,
what do you mean by self-assured? As in like more confident of your own decisions?
More confident in my own like decisions and ability to do something, I guess, because if you want to like sell an idea to a client or something like that, you can't sound like you're not sure about what you're doing, can you? Because they wouldn't believe you. They wouldn't believe that what you want to do is correct. And I mean, in a way, I think I have grown with that because we do a lot of presentations like through studio work, like throughout term time. So we have presentation like mid-term, sort of end of term, and maybe others in between. And we're very sort of vulnerable in that sense because we're standing up in front of like our peers and like our tutors and also sometimes like critics that have come in as well. And we have like 50 minutes to present our work to them. And so at first I was very like nervous about that. And I'm always nervous before I start any of those presentations. But as I start talking, I do have this sense of confidence that what I've created over the last 8 weeks has some sort of logic and meaning to it. Like it's not completely made up stuff that I've just stuck and thrown onto a page. So I don't know. I think that I've grown in that sense, like through learning. But at the same time, I have found that because I don't know if it's the same for you, but at uni, you for us anyway, we've come under a lot more criticism than you do at school. I think in school you receive a lot more praise than you do at uni. Like either it's just ignored or you're criticized. Yeah, exactly. And I think that can sort of knock your confidence in a way when you're used to being sort of like praised for something at school. But I think then you have to grow again from that to realize that actually it's actually better to be criticized, because they actually then, it's almost a sign of respect that they've taken on board what you've said and have then like tried to help you understand how you could improve that, or maybe just help them understand it a bit better. So I've learned to value that criticism now.
I really
didn't at first.
Yeah, I really like what you said about that, and about being vulnerable. Like, putting a piece of work out there is really about putting a piece of yourself out there, and that's I think that's not just to do with creativity. That's just art in general. Art, after all, it's an expression of something that you see in the world that you're trying to represent, right? It's a form of expression. I feel it as well. Sometimes, like, after I make a video, or after I write a piece of work, and it's like there's always a part of me is like, I've left a part of me in there, right? And you have to get over the fact of that you're gonna put yourself out there, and usually that's what makes the best work.
No, definitely I'd agree with that. You can't. I think that they're the things that you care about as well the most. Like if you've written a piece of like writing or something like that, and it's sort of just, if you don't care about it, you probably haven't put enough of your own opinion and self into that piece of work. It's just a piece of fact or something. So
how do you go about, like, I don't know exactly what you do in your course, but I'm guessing there's probably a lot of portfolio work as well. And how much of that is a balance between having to do things that you're told, but also being able to, like what you said, being able to put yourself in there and take it into directions that you want to take it in, given the framework.
We're almost always encouraged to like have our own opinions and ideas. Like all of the work is predominantly just like our direction, the route that we decide to take. Like usually we start off with like a site, like a project site or something. We might go and visit that site, have a look around, take some notes about it, then come back and continue with that sort of research until you find like an area of interest that might sort of like spark an idea that you want to design something for that. Then you usually come up with sort of basic ideas, and we always have sort of like meetings with our tutors twice a week, so sort of like half an hour meetings with our tutors where we sort of discuss our ideas, and they're sort of there to help you maybe sort of create like more structural ideas, or just sort of help you like push that idea further. Sometimes it's a difficult one. Often I think that I've come up with almost like my final idea. I was like, what? Like the number of times I talk to my friends and I'm just like, this is it. This is my idea. I'm not letting them change my idea at all. I come out of that meeting half an hour later going, well, I started off with this design. Now I have a curved building that like spirals up this way, and the idea has completely changed and all my plans are going back to the drawing board. So in a sense, it's them that have sort of like made me to make that change. Like I probably wouldn't have made that change if I hadn't gone to the meeting, but they've also made me see a different side to it as well. So it probably needed to be changed for a reason. And so then that helps me to sort of like formulate my own sort of ideas after that. So all the work is our own work, but usually with a bit of prodding and poking and changing direction that's been like caused by our tutors. Which is good. I don't know.
I mean, obviously, as long as what they say doesn't come from a place of malice and it comes from a place of actually wanting to be helpful, and that goes with friends' comments as well. In terms of your work, do you sort of like have you ever taken a step back and just looked at kind of your work over the years and seen like sort of like a trend that you like? It seems like a lot of the things like go towards this direction, right? I seem to take on this particular, like I seem to favor this style. Has that ever gone through your mind?
Yeah. For a while I just said spiral staircases. I seemed to just put spiral staircases in literally everything I did. It just became a joke. Like, it would be like, I've got another spiral staircase. But then I moved away from that because I hated having to model spiral staircases. I gave up. They were too fiddly. And so I don't know whether there's a real style that I sort of look towards. I'd say that probably my work takes on, we do a lot of like collage work, so to help us sort of like depict the buildings that we sort of have imagined. And I often sort of tend to lean towards more of an abstract style, but in like a pastel version, which probably doesn't make any sense, but it makes sense in my head. And I don't usually choose to make things look.
To me.
I don't usually make things look hyper realistic. Like, I usually go for a way, like when I'm sort of like photoshopping my building into the environment around it, I often layer on lots of like paper textures. So like I just like, and so just to create this idea of like a collage look. So I suppose that that's a trend that you can see throughout my work when I've tried to like describe it. But I don't think the actual buildings themselves have a particular like theme that they follow. I think they're all quite different. Though wood, so sort of fall in love with a lot of wood. So you often find a lot of woody sort of elements, timber elements in my designs. But that's sort of the main thing.
And paper comes from wood, so I think you're in love with
you see,
forests. I'm
exactly.
seeing the connection.
I never thought of that, but that is clearly where my idea was leaning towards all along.
I'm sorry that I'm asking you so many questions, but you know, I don't think I've ever gotten this in depth about this with you. So this, to me, I would just find it really interesting, especially as someone that you know, I do consider myself creative as well, but I have kind of been inclined more towards the, you know, the quantitative engineering side, which brings to a point, something I wanted to ask you, because it's, you know, you've gone into this kind of trade that is almost a blend of both the artistic, the qualitative, creative side, you know, call it the right side of your brain, if you will, but also the quantitative, very logical number side, which is called the left side of your brain. So I mean, which is something both that I've seen that you can do both to a very high level. I mean, obviously in A levels you did take maths and physics as well. So I don't know. I just like seeing that. I don't know. You really someone that I admire in a lot of ways. The fact that you are able to do both to a really good degree, and then it seems almost natural that architecture is kind of like a meeting point between the two.
No, it definitely is, and that's probably one of the reasons why I went into that sort of path in the first place. Like when I was sort of like looking at subjects, like I said, it's always been in the back of my mind, but probably it's the reason why I wanted to take those subjects at A level, and I guess I'd been thinking about it for a while, that I wanted that blend of the sciences and like the arts. But it's definitely something that you still see, like when we're learning. Like we do like studio work and things like that, but at the same time we do construction lectures, structures lectures, and like environmental lectures. And actually it does influence the buildings very much. Like there's always like the boring. It's not boring at all, actually. It's interesting sort of points that do influence your design hugely. Like you always start off with this grand like plan that you have for your design, and then you suddenly go, oh, I need to get a toilet in here, or a service building, or like a lift for all the people, and I need to make sure that the corridors are this wide to make sure that people can fit through with a wheelchair and things like that, which that is part of the job, and it is interesting, but it is that where you always have to have that logic imposed on the design. But in some ways I almost wish that we had more scientific grounding in like architecture than we do. I mean, I think that at Cambridge, ours is definitely leaning probably towards the arts side anyway, arts, history, philosophy, tiny bit. But even though, because we do like environmental studies and we learn about sort of like lighting, like daylighting diagrams and things like that, like how much light you need, sort of like thermal ventilation, things like that. And we learn them, but we don't learn them in enough detail that I could do the calculations myself. So like I know that somebody has to do the calculations, but I don't know how to do the calculations. And I guess there's this sort of like part of me that doesn't feel satisfied that I don't know how to do it. And I guess you can't do, because that's the whole point, isn't it, of like construction, like that whole like field has loads of people working together on one project, and it's all that sort of cumulative knowledge that comes in to create a final proposal. But I suppose that's probably my biggest regret, is not knowing how to actually work those calculations. Despite like going to all those lectures, I still don't know how to do the calculations.
Where do you see yourself in the future? I mean, you described like, the construction of a building is I think you said it very aptly. It's many people from many different disciplines working together, and it's I mean, you have the architecture, you have the why is that the only person I can think of? You have the builder, you have all these different people. Think about it.
No, exactly.
Yeah. But I mean, where do you see yourself? Are you in the future? Do you see yourself content as the one that just provides the plans, or do you see yourself like kind of, incorporating more of that technical knowledge into what you do?
I probably see myself ending up focusing mainly, it will just be as an architect, so mainly on the design based side. So only because I'd imagine that those calculations require the knowledge, but also you probably need a degree behind it to sort of like ensure that you are calculating the correct things as well. You need a degree. And I suppose like if I had actually considered going to, I think it's Southampton, because they do a 2-degree, like you do architecture and you do engineering at the same time. So I think that would have been incredibly tough and challenging, but I had considered it. But I think because I decided not to go down that route in the end, and I went down sort of like more the creative side, I probably will continue with more like the driving the artistic side of it. But I'd hope that whatever I can do will incorporate some of the sort of structural like calculations, actual like technical sort of job side to it. I don't know. I like the thought that because there's a real thing, I guess, amongst engineers of sort of saying, oh, that crazy architect has brought this stupid design, it's got a curving roof. Like, I heard this with my dad the other day. He's going, they brought a building that's got this like amazing curved roof, but it's just floating. Like, what's it standing on? It's just floating in the sky. And I don't want to be like, I don't want like an engineer to be like, what is she thinking? I want to actually have like a logical base behind my designs, I suppose, so that I can like argue why I want that design and why I think it will work. But
how much?
I don't know. Hopefully, who knows?
How much of that is a balance though? Because there are some designs, there are some like buildings in this world where I'm sure someone, the first time an engineer looked at it, they were like, well, how the hell are we gonna build that? So it's almost like it's almost like there's a fine dance between, you can give an idea and it can be completely wild, and it's like, is it up to the engineer to like tone it down to something that's conventionally acceptable, or is it, or you bring it to another engineer that's like, okay, I'm gonna try and do my best to make your dream a reality?
Yeah, no, I do agree. Like, I don't think you should like, if you believe that something's right and something can work, and it might be like the next sort of innovative thing, the next sort of change that we want to see, I think that you should argue for that point and should be able to like push that change forwards. You shouldn't just settle for like a rectangular box because that's what's going to be easiest and that's what's known and that's what people realize what people want to do, that the engineer wants to do. But I think like I said, it helps to have a sort of technical understanding that you might be able to create what you've designed. So even if you don't know exactly like the sort of the weights, dimensions, forces that you need, you want to have some sort of idea of it, I think. Like, I'm trying to think if I can think of any particular buildings, but they've all gone completely out of my head as I'm saying it. But don't know. Trying to think. No, the only sort of like wacky designs I can think of at this moment, like I'm just thinking of like Zaha Hadid's sort of like parametric buildings that I guess somebody probably looked at those and just went.
A picture of that.
Yeah, no, they're probably, if you think of like an archetypal, curvy architectural building, it was probably one of hers. If you were thinking about those, but don't know. No. I don't know. And although people so a lot of people in the architecture profession will like criticize that for different reasons, like whatever it is, sort of elitism or whatever, like I think that there is a need for that in a sense. There is a need for those crazy, wacky buildings that are sort of awe-inspiring and do make people stop and think and wonder how that's there.
Do you have a favorite architect or a favorite period in time?
Not really. I was actually thinking about this question the other day, but I don't think I do. I feel like if I do, it changes quite quickly. Like how we talked about something, like we already learn about somebody in one of the lectures, and I fall in love with that design, and then I look at something else, and I sort of fall in love with that as well. I think it's not so much the architects; it's probably, or even the buildings. It's the feeling that the buildings create for somebody sort of inside the building in particular. I think outside, the external aesthetic, of course, is incredibly important because architecture can really ruin streets. So I've been realizing a lot recently, but I think that it's also the feeling that you create once you're inside the building, because it's something that you experience on a daily basis. And I think it's the small, little details, like people can sort of dismiss brutalism and concrete as sort of, I don't know, not something people can necessarily relate to on a human scale, but I've actually sort of fallen in love with certain elements of that. Like, I think it's in South Bank Centre, they've got this really lovely internal cladding, which is concrete, but when you use the formwork to create timber formwork to create the look as if it's actually slats. So if you look at it, it's got the little the grains, the knots of the wood, but in the concrete. And I was just staring at that for ages, just going, I love that piece of concrete.
It's Fran, it's like your mom saying, Fran, why are you staring at the wall? It's interesting, Mom.
Yeah, basically. It's the small details, I think. It's the positioning of a window so that it lets them just the right amount of light, or gives you this view of a certain I don't know, element of nature or another building that you want to see through it. I don't know. It's those sorts of elements, really. But
I obviously I don't know that much about architecture, but I'm sort of relating to this on this by replacing the word architecture with the word books, or buildings with the word books, because it's I kind of see the parallels. It's not really the building in itself. It's like what you said. It's the feeling that you get in a building, or it's the feeling that you get whilst you're in the middle of a book. And I think that really comes when there's a clarity in the vision of the architect, but not just the architect, but also everyone that builds that building has a singular vision. And I'm sorry, this is just I'm just seeing the parallels everywhere. It's a book is good when it's you can tell that a book is good when it's everything is related around a theme, right? And the more you look into it, the more it kind of pops out. And I relate to this on movies as well. It's the director's job to make everyone have the same vision. And I think that's really what art is. The best art is part of someone. It is trying to make it known to an audience, to feel that one thing that person wants you to feel. And that I think that's the only metric that you should be able to measure a piece of art on.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's also good when it's done well. It's sort of making you realize that, but without actually explicitly saying it. I'm thinking with books and films, it's not obvious. They haven't made it stand out, but at the back of your mind, your subconscious is aware that that is there. That's the sort of overriding feeling within it. What have you been reading recently? Because I don't know, this might have been a while ago, but I know you'd got a big selection of books that you'd ordered, charity, secondhand books that you'd ordered, but I'm still working your way through them.
Okay, the problem is, right, my Facebook feed has become just secondhand groups with books, so I can't open Facebook anymore because I'm going to spend money. It's gotten to the point.
I mean, that's one way of getting off social media.
It's gotten to the point where I have 25 books to my right where I have not read yet. But it's okay.
Wow.
It's an investment, right? But
that's good though. It's nice to have that.
But also I see it it's a show of my ambition, I want to read all these books, and it's I don't know. There's just so much to read, so much to know, and once you start looking into something, you can keep going and keep going. And it can make you feel at a loss sometimes, but it's also really, really beautiful in its own way.
Yeah. No, no, it's nice to have that many books so that you want to read as well. Like, I always think that whenever I go into a bookstore, that would be my ideal home. I'm just like, I'd love to just live here. Because then you wouldn't have to, like, pay for any of these books. You could just sit and choose whichever books you want to read that day.
I was gonna ask you actually, how do you sort of, how do you sort of, thinking of how to structure this question, but like, how do you sort of keep yourself exposed to things that you might not know in terms of architecture, for example? Like, is there certain practices that you do that makes you exposed to different sorts of architecture? I'm just thinking, like, in terms of books, I read a lot of books,
Mm-hmm.
and the things that I do is like I look at the references and look at what books the author read, so that maybe I'm interested in
Okay.
it, and that sort
Yeah.
of like
Yeah.
organically expands my interests. So I'm thinking like how do you make sure that you're not just tunnel visioning into a specific style?
Yeah. I mean, I guess probably the main thing is through reading different articles. So making sure I don't know, whenever something like pops up, even if it's something like on Zine, or even if it's like an article from like The Guardian or something like that might be about like a different field of architecture, or quite often it's sort of more social than architecture, because I do believe like architecture has a big role to play socially as well on people's lives. And I suppose that it's been through reading those sorts of articles I've made sure that I haven't just sort of focused on like the star architects and like those works and like a sort of style. So I tried to sort of spread my wings that sense. But I'd actually say the most important thing has probably been lectures. I'd say that going to lectures has actually increased my sort of awareness of different strands of architecture a lot more than sort of any of my reading probably has done, just because lots of the lecturers have been really like engaging some of their points that we've spoken about. Like, I have a particular, I think we have two sort of lecturers that spoke about architecture in the sense of otherness, so how it affects people on the peripheries of society, on the towns that aren't really there. So sort of like the favelas, if you want to call them, or like townships, or like slums. Again, these words are like used as words that we use in society, but whether they're the right words we should use for them or not, who knows. But I guess I probably wouldn't have thought in so much detail about those people and their lives and I can't say what makes architecture for them, because I don't necessarily think I could actually describe what architecture is for them, but it's like what makes a home, what makes a society, I guess. So those lectures have all been really interesting, and I suppose that encourages me to do a bit more reading on that sort of topic. But I don't know. Trying to think. I think actually we don't do enough of this, but probably writing essays always encourages you to do a lot more reading, because often you sort of you have to frame your argument on, as you know, like on both sides of like the coin or something like that. So it does push you to read. Exactly. But it pushes you to read like both points of view, and I am actually terrible at coming down on a side. Like, whether I hear an argument like in the news, or like my parents say something, I can see their point of view, and then automatically my brain just like comes to like the opposite point of view as well. So like if you want me to make a decision or like have an opinion on anything, it's terrible, because I will always just in my head I will be arguing against myself at the same time. So I suppose that's probably what my lecturers have taught me to do, in a sense, through that, and like through I don't know, essays. We don't do enough essays though, but I'm not great at writing, so I'm probably quite thankful we don't do that many essays.
Didn't you get the English award in like year 10?
Fluke is all I can say. I don't think I did. I don't remember getting that. Did I get it? I don't think I ever got it for English.
The way Jakob said to me is like he got it 3 years in a row, so they had to give it to someone else.
Oh yes, I do remember that now, and I only remember it because it was the year Jakob didn't get it.
Yeah.
Now, see, I don't even remember getting it because I did not deserve it.
Wow,
So...
You're in the club of people that actually got awards from DC, though. Still salty about that.
Did you never got an award?
I got second in English 3 years in a row.
Sad.
Yeah.
No, I know. I think awards are a funny system. Like, I was talking to somebody else about this recently, and like, it's not very fair, because they award a few people, and like I was very fortunate in that I got awarded for quite a few different things, and actually it probably should have just been spread. Like, I don't know. It should have just been like they should have maybe spoke to the teachers or had more of a view and like seen who had got different awards and who had got awards before, because whenever you went to those ceremonies, I'm pretty sure it was the same people getting awards every single year all the time. So they weren't exactly the fairest system.
It's hard to I think it's not just, I mean, I think there is a point to be said about awarding something based on merit, but it comes down to, I think, is kind of grown a bit disenchanted with education and like exams in general, because it's not, I believe it isn't the most the best way to really show what you know. And like some people chose
No, it's
yeah.
not.
And
It definitely isn't. I definitely don't see sort of like an exam system where everything's based on points and marks is the best way, because it doesn't show. People do so differently, like in exams, like, and I think that people should be encouraged to learn. Like, definitely I've learnt more when people have sort of like encouraged me through saying that something has been good and by how this has worked, and then show me better, like by constantly putting people down. So like if you get a mark and you're constantly sort of there, you're not going to want to push yourself to do better. There's no encouragement. You need to have that teacher that will support you in your sort of like learning, but I don't think it's there for a lot of people.
But also for me, it's like having exams, just by the virtue of the fact of the way it works, is that it will make people just do it for the exam, and it's not actually like representative of real learning, is it? Because you do the exam and then you forget it like 3 weeks later.
Like a second after, I walked out of like those exams, and it's like my brain just emptied all the information out onto the pavement. Like I can recall some things, but not in detail. Like, and that's kind of sad because that information was interesting, but yet my brain didn't deem it worthwhile to like retain that. So annoyed with it. Stupid brain.
Can I?
But I think.
Sorry. Go on.
No, I was just going to say, I think it is difficult to know like how we should examine, because clearly like this year's exams didn't really work out, because obviously they didn't do exams, but that wasn't any easier for them to work out like a system of marking people.
Yeah.
So I do see why they do exams, like to try and categorize people into different like levels and abilities, but it's probably just the teaching that leads up to it.
Yeah.
That hasn't always been so. And that's nothing against teachers. It's often the way that like governments or whoever it is that is in charge of arranging like syllabuses have chosen to sort of structure that syllabus. Like my mum often speaks, because she's a teacher, she speaks about how when she first started they could sort of touch on a topic. I think this is probably primary school, and they could like incorporate that topic into lots of different areas. So maybe if they were looking at like a particular country, they would then look at it through like historical points, sociological, sort of religious, and even like food and things like that, geographical. And so you then get this sort of broader sense of what this topic is about. Whereas then I think more recently, like syllabuses sort of structured things into, you're learning about history here, so you're going to learn about the Tudors. And then you're going to do geography here, so you're going to do this particular like natural disaster or something. And it became too like compartmentalized, rather than having a sense of something overall, which I think probably is true. It was lost.
If you even think about it naturally, it's like, do you go through an earthquake and only think about the geographical implications and or causations of that? It's like if you're, I mean that's I think that's a very good point that you made. But also I feel like just the fact I don't like the idea of this society becoming like kind of, they're used to being spoon-fed things, and I'm not one to say because I was spoon-fed things as well, but it's like the things that I have learned that actually I have internalized and I can remember to this day are the ones where my teachers didn't give me the answer, and they were just like, they let me suffer and they let me find the answer myself. That's what learning actually is.
Yeah, it is, definitely. No, it is, rather than just being told that that's what it is, you have to find it out for yourself. But no, I guess, I don't know. There's a lot that can be done, and I understand that it is difficult. Whoever's in charge of it, I do not sort of like envy their position of having to work out the best way that education should be laid out, but I don't know. Maybe there should be another upheaval.
Can I ask, like, you talked a bit about kind of the social aspects of architecture as well, talking about, the favelas or
Mm-hmm.
the slums. It's like,
Yeah.
what do you see yourself in the future working in? I mean, is there a particular um, kind of field that you want to go into? Is it social architecture? Is it more towards like developing communities?
Yeah. It's so difficult. I flip flop a lot actually on this. Before I started studying architecture, flip flop. Before I started studying architecture, I probably had this vision of going and studying and working on bigger projects, I think, was my idea. But then when I started studying, I think I actually realized that there were sort of a lot of buildings that are actually more important in everyday life. And actually, social architecture is something that is quite sort of important, I think. And I think it's quite key on my mind. It's something that I would love to work on, that sort of sector, like how to create sort of beautiful environments for everyone to sort of be able to appreciate. Because I mean, I don't know, maybe this is coming at it from the wrong point of view, but I do think that maybe the environment you grow up in, so sort of like the physical environment, like the buildings you're surrounded by, can have a sort of impact on like your mental state, and also like how you then interact with sort of society in general, like what you think is what you deserve. I don't know, that sounds like a weird way of saying it, but
It's like they don't know anything
I
else
think
except that which they have grown up, the environments that they have grown up in.
the environments that they've grown up in. Like, I think that if you sort of say that, like, I find it very disheartening when you hear people sort of say that this is, like, I've grown up on a council estate or something like that, and see it as like a negative, that side, that's what I've sort of grown up to. And often people say because I was on a council estate, it sort of meant that I didn't feel like I could progress. This wasn't for me. This wasn't a path. I wasn't supposed to go off and study this or university. And the few that do, it's like a big thing. It's sort of like, I grew up on a county state, but I still managed to achieve this.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be a but I still. It should just be a, it's what you can do. It's opportunities for everyone. And I think that by being, like, I was reading a book, what was it called? I actually have it here. No, I don't. I think it's downstairs. But it's a lady that's going back to, I think, a council estate she grew up in Birmingham. I think it was on the outskirts of Birmingham. And she talks about walking past these houses which are just the same, and the fact that how disheartening it was that everyone's house was exactly the same. It was just a monotony. There was no individuality in it. And I think that those sorts of huge sprawling estates that we created cheaply by like council planning are not the way to go. They're not the way to sort of provide accommodation for people. That's just saying it's fine, you've got a roof over your head and you've got like a few of some rooms, like bedrooms for you to live in. I think that there should be I hope that there's a way in which you can create architecture that is still affordable for everyone and affordable for people to actually build, because I do understand like the economics of that, but actually has much more of an individual, unique sort of quality to each piece of housing. But so I would love to go down that field. I guess the probably rather boring answer to your question that you asked at the beginning is it's a very difficult job market at the moment, and I will probably just end up in the first thing that accepts me, ultimately, which is a very sad way to look at it. And I hope that's not the case. I hope that I have the ability to sort of not pick and choose, but like go down the field I'd like to go towards, but I don't know. Who knows? I think it's sort of quite uncertain at the moment, so it'll be interesting to see what I'm doing in a few years' time.
For what it's worth, I really hope that you manage to get down, to start on the path that you seem to be so passionate about. Because that which you brought up, it's not something that I've ever really thought about. I guess it's like I've always like kind of looked at it from the lens that they should be happy that they have a roof over their heads. Given the fact that maybe their income is low, or all these things, right? So, but it's also it's quite an interesting aspect that you brought up, and it's just the first time that I've ever really thought about it. Like maybe it's more the feeling that you get from getting raised up in council estates. It's like it does sort of kind of gear your mind in a way that isn't maybe best for you to be able to realize that there are opportunities that lay outside of that. Basically, I'm
Yeah.
saying is like you are conditioned by your environment, and this is probably something that
Yes.
affects a lot of
Yeah.
derelict and black neighborhoods in the U.S. I think the
Yeah.
the fact that when someone black does make it to the office, like for example Barack Obama, there was such a big deal made out of it because it
Yeah.
wasn't just
Yeah.
it was someone that came from I don't know about his background, but it's like historically black people have been in the worst neighborhoods, and someone has gotten there as a symbol of what they can actually do. So I guess that's just the quite. I'm just trying to think of what form that would be able to take though. It's like it's a balance between keeping it affordable, but also housing the most number of people that you can, but
Yeah.
also making it making sure that they know that they have equal opportunity in terms of being able to raise their socioeconomic status. Which I mean, I guess if you think about it, maybe not to do with the housing so much, or like the actual architecture, it could contribute, but also, but could be as well to do with just the political opportunities that are available to them, and that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. This is just such a
No. I completely get it. It's like having a voice. It's like who has a voice in local government, like starting off with like smaller, like who like even just like a sort of like town council, and then progressing on from that up to the highest levels. And it is important that everyone has a voice at each level. And I think it's very difficult to get that because again, that whole idea of you can't then just categorize everyone from a particular race or a particular background as the same person, because everyone within that is different. So you're never going to please everyone. That's the whole point of politics. No one is ever going to be completely happy, but it's still important that majority of people's voices are heard throughout. But I'm waiting for a society where that happens. Not sure there are many.
Hello, can you hear me? All right.
Yes.
I think it's probably a good place to round out this discussion. It's been quite nice. I'm conscious that you're probably busy and you have a lot of things to do as well. But just to close, it's been really nice to talk to you. I mean, last time I talked to you was kind of like in the middle of March.
Yeah.
And you made me eat vegetables. I remember that.
I literally, I have that. I think I've told a few people about that now because I'm just like, my friend came and he was just like, I was made to eat raw vegetables.
Which is quite funny actually, because I've kind of been going. I don't know whether it was your influence. I don't take credit for this. It's definitely not your influence. But
I'm waiting.
I've been going more towards that. It's like somehow I came upon that realization. It's like maybe wait. Fruits and vegetables are actually, they should be most of my diet. Wow. So.
Yeah, no. The thing is, I eat so many fruit and veg, but I just counteract the fact that I eat healthily by then eating too many biscuits and cakes. Not helped by living with my mum, who loves cake. I mean, it's great, but it's not great for me. Also, I've eaten so much cake during lockdown.
Also, I just wanted to say, you probably don't remember this, but I think we were like 14 or 15, and starting off this podcast, you're one of the people that I had in my mind that kind of like made me think that I could do it, because I probably really don't remember this, but I think we were like 14 and 15, and you were like, you have this ability to make people feel comfortable around you, and I'm like, I don't know. Again, you probably don't remember saying that, but it's like,
yeah. I don't remember saying that, like those words specifically, but I can definitely imagine that that's how I felt, because I definitely still feel like that now. Like, I don't have any awkwardness in talking to you. Like, there are a lot of people who you'd class as your friends, but yet after a while, you still have this slight feeling that you're a bit like, oh, I'm not sure what to say next, or I'm a bit comfortable. Are they judging me for something? And I never feel that around you. Like, it's not something I ever feel. So I still agree with that now. I still agree with however I own myself saying that.
Well, I will counter that with my new favorite saying. It takes two to tango. I mean, it's not just on my side. It's the fact that I have people that are willing to just open up as well, and for me, it makes me happy that you are one of them. Because I genuinely appreciate having you as a friend, and you're obviously someone that I admire quite a bit. And I really hope
Same
that
goes to you, definitely. No.
I really hope
No,
that we keep in
definitely.
touch.
No, I know. I know, and I'm glad. I was just going to say this again, but I'm glad that you have done like these podcasts with people, because I think it is really interesting, like seeing that, like getting more in-depth conversations with people. Like the number of times, especially nowadays, I realise that people say to each other, like, "How are you?" and you go, "Fine." And like, "What have you been up to?" And you say like very short one-word answers. But you, like, I've watched them. I see you push people like past that original, like, I don't want to say comfort zone, because people are still comfortable, but that past that, like, just sort of like natural replying of saying good thanks. You force people to actually like answer you and give detailed sort of descriptions of what they're up to and what they're feeling. And it's so important that we have that nowadays, because I think that's the reason why conversations with people our generation are so short, because
Yeah.
none of us want to open up to each other.
Yeah.
we just sort of like end on one-word answers.
If
So these are really good. I've enjoyed watching them.
Which ones have you watched? Just out of curiosity, I'm like getting nervous.
I've
now.
watched I haven't watched many. I've only watched people that I sort of like know, sort of. Like the one I watched the longest was Kiana's.
Yeah.
Because so I watched Kiana's. I watched a bit of the one that you had with Nadia.
Yeah.
And with Nick. And
Nick?
I think I watched a bit of one with Jakob. Don't ask why I watched the one.
Yeah, what's going on here, friend?
It came up. It now comes up on my recommended, and he happened to be there, and so I was like, I'll click on it and see what he's up to. I didn't watch all of it, but it was still interesting.
Thank you for your support. And now you're gonna see yourself in probably 1 or 2 weeks' time.
Oh dear.
I hope
I will not be watching that one. I can tell you that.
I will be posting clips of it on my Instagram just to embarrass you. Don't worry.
I hate looking at myself.
I hope.
Well.
I hope that we can keep in touch. It's honestly been my absolute pleasure to have you on. But just as a funny note, now it's not like now when I reach out to people, it's not how are you. It's how are you? Do you want to be on my podcast?
They'll be aware of this now. If they know what you're up to, they'll like see a message from Zhariff and they'll be like, do I want to click on this one, or do I just want to like ignore this message?
All right.
I don't know. I think most people, especially because people aren't up to much, they're probably happy to do it.
Yeah. Thank you again. All right. With that, I think
no problem. Enjoy the rest of your day, whatever you're up to.
All right. Bye, Fran. Take care. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.